Today I really wanted to talk, sort of give an overview of IBM Endpoint Manager and many of the pieces of IBM Endpoint Manager and how they fit together. Some of this you may have already realized yourself or have been covered in other trainings, but I think it's helpful to have an overview of the system and the different parts to it because there are many. Uh, and I think this will kind of help you see how they all fit together in hopefully a little bit of a different way, uh, and hopefully you'll get some value out of that. So when I'm talking about the parts of IBM Endpoint Manager or Tivoli Endpoint Manager or Big Fix, whichever one you want to call it, I'm really talking about analysis, properties, relevance, automatic groups, actions, fixlets and tasks, multi-action groups, and baselines. These are like the core pieces that make up the variety of things in the console that you interact with, that you create, that you use. There's quite a lot of them. There's definitely more to the console than just this. I mean, you have dashboards and wizards and other pieces, but those dashboards and wizards uh, help you create fixes and tasks or groups or uh, other many of these other pieces or help you interact with them. But these are the core pieces as I see them in the system that you actually use on a regular basis. The first of these that I want to talk about is automatic groups, which are made up of different pieces of relevance. And the relevance in this case helps determine which computers should be a part of that group. They sort of query computer properties to group certain computers and exclude others. So you might have a computer group that includes all staff machines, or you might have a computer group that's all developer machines or all lab machines, and allows you to affect these different groups of machines in a different way. The next thing I want to talk about is baselines. A baseline is essentially a multi-action group plus extra relevance. That's really what it's made up of. Um, that's the main way that I think about baselines. And really, what's a multi-action group? Well, a multi-action group is a group of fixlets and tasks that you are taking action with as a group all together. Baselines and multi-action groups are basically taking a bunch of fixlets and tasks and executing them at once. And really, what's a fixlet and task? Well, fixlet and tasks, they are essentially actions and relevance. There is relevance to determine whether or not a fixlet and task should be run on a system, and there are multiple actions within a fixlet and task that can be run. And what are actions? Well, actions are ActionScript and embedded relevance. They're basically what can change systems with IBM Endpoint Manager. They are the the piece that actually does something to change the system, and they're the only part of the system that can actually do that. Relevance cannot change the system in any way, but actions make changes, and there can be many different actions within the same fixlet or task, but an action at its core is ActionScript, and the ActionScript um, can sort of read stuff from the system through embedded relevance, which I have an example here of pulling back the computer name or the IP address of the system. So it's sort of reading this data from the system and able to dynamically use this within the ActionScript. And then there's the ActionScript itself, which can do things like delete, move, and wait hidden, which can actually execute commands on the system. So that's the core of what actions are. And all of these different pieces all kind of scale back up again. It's really all about relevance and actions. All of these pieces, the automatic groups, the baselines, the multi-action groups, the fixlets and tasks, these are all different ways to group relevance and actions. And automatic groups don't actually contain actions themselves, but you use automatic groups, or I do, and it's very helpful to use automatic groups to target your actions, your baselines, your multi-action groups, your fixlets and tasks, to target them at specific groups of computers rather than just one computer. It's much better to sort of dynamically target all of the computers that should have the same settings, and if any computer joins at a later date that should also have that setting, then it can be applied to that system automatically. The next thing I want to talk about is automatic groups in in reference to um, uh, analyses and properties and other things. Automatic groups in this instance can still be used to target, and even the same automatic groups can be used to target specific analyses, which are just properties and relevance. That's really all an analysis is a group of many different properties plus relevance to determine whether or not that analysis should be applied to a machine and pull back information from that machine. And a property is really just a relevance statement. It pulls back different information like the computer name, the IP address, whether or not a piece of software is installed. Uh, that's really what a property is just a piece of relevance. And within that property is relevance, which is really what it's all about. Um, relevance queries relevance queries the state of the system. It pulls back information about the system. Really, anything you want to know about the system can usually be pulled back with relevance. There are some limitations, there are some frustrations with using relevance. Relevance is read only. Relevance cannot affect the system. It cannot change the system. It can only essentially ask the system questions and answer those questions. Um, in the case of the relevance that are applied to automatic groups and applied to baselines, fixlets, and tasks, those are all relevant statements that either end up with a true or a false. They do not um, return anything other than true or false, because if it's true, then those things can be applied to a system, or if it's false, then it will not be applied to a system. But in the case of properties, uh, here, the real power of properties is being able to pull back things other than true and false. You can do that as well, and you can use the true and false statements to sort of build a larger statement. But the power of properties is really to pull back strings, values, sizes of files, the locations of things, the lists of software that are installed. There's a lot of examples of properties that are extremely helpful, and there's a lot more available. And sort of going backwards, you know, analyses are just groups of properties, and properties are what are actually in the analysis that make them useful, and they're all made of relevance. So really what I'm trying to get across here is that the entire system is built around relevance, and relevance is the key to using the system. Relevance can be very difficult to learn, to write, and to read at times, but it's really the most important thing in the system. Most of what we spend our time with is thinking about the actions that we're doing on the system, but writing these things, creating these things, they're all really based around relevance, and that's what gives the system its power and the ability to automate things, is to knowing whether or not things should run, can run,